Aye. Any opposed? All right. Next item on the agenda is the beer permit request. Approval of a Class A on-premise beer permit for Thai Cafe Kasumi, I hope that I said that right, 743 North Campbell Station Road. Is the applicant
Yes,
here?
the applicant is here. Would you step up?
To the
Yes.
Name and address? Do it, I don't have to swear him in, do I?
No.
Okay.
no.
What
Good.
address you need to be mine or?
Is the business address
This is
fine?
fine.
Yeah.
Chris?
Yeah, I'm Tommy Nguyen, the owner of the new owner of the Thai Cafe and what the name of? Even me don't remember the name. So what is it? That 743 North Campbell Station.
Road.
That's not Knoxville, right? Not Farragut.
Can I remind you that that's not Knoxville, that's Farragut.
That's Farragut. But
Yeah.
on the address they say that Knoxville. So how?
Well, in your paperwork, you should say that you're in the town of Farragut, not,
Okay.
You should, because that's how we collect, that's how they know how to disseminate our, for tax purposes.
Because most of the time when I go to I apply for any cutters, like go to gas or electric and everything, they call it Knoxville, so I don't. It's Farragut, I guess.
Yes. Well, like I said, for tax purposes, it helps us make sure that the money that's being spent and collected in Farragut comes back to Farragut. So, and Allison has to kind of look over things how many should, quarterly? She's going.
We look at it regularly, but it would certainly help us if
Yeah.
we didn't have to audit that and go back in the rears and get that money from Knoxville.
Just the address is like existing, the
Yep.
previous owner is, address is as Knoxville, that's why I say
Well,
that.
that was an
And-
error.
Yeah, it's not in Knoxville.
Okay.
It's in the
That's
town
what
of
I'm
Farragut.
saying, is everything I have to do, I come to Farragut, and in some way, somehow, does the address say everything is not. Even the owner, the building lease, gonna tell me that Knoxville, so
Okay. Everything's in order?
Yes, ma'am.
Are you open? You're just transferring
Yes, I
the
just
ownership?
transferred ownership. And,
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Does anybody have any other questions?
I have none.
None.
Have a packet from the Metro Drug Coalition. Please make sure that you guys are carding everyone and making sure that you're not serving anyone underage.
Yes,
It's very important to us.
Oh, it is very important to me, too.
Okay.
Yeah.
So do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second?
Second?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. And that's the end of the beer board meeting.
So we good?
You're good.
So, I just free to go now?
Yes.
I guess.
All right, so it's 7 o'clock on the dot, and this is the Farragut Board and of Mayor and Alderman meeting for September 28th. We will start by rising for first prayer.
Opening prayer by Elder Connor Welch will offer it for us. I see we have some Boy Scouts here. Would you all like to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance? Good deal. So as soon as the prayer is concluded?
Yeah, after the prayer.
Our dear kind Father in heaven, we're grateful for the opportunity we have to gather together for this town council meeting and for the opportunity we have to discuss the important matters facing this town. Father, we ask for thy blessing to be upon each person here and upon the members of the council, that they'll be able to know the right things to discuss and how to bring them forward. Father, we ask thy blessing to be upon this town and all the people who live here. that they can continue to prosper and be blessed. And we love thee, Father, and we say these things in the name of thy Son, Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen. Y'all want to come down here and lead us?
Josh, you leading? Scout's leading?
Salute. I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you.
Sit right here. You just can't get on the record. Everybody was standing. So the first item of the agenda is approval of the agenda.
Are there any changes?
I have none. None.
None.
Move to approve.
Second.
All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Next item is the mayor's report, and I don't have anything of great news tonight. If you all have something you want to talk about, go ahead. If not, we'll move on to the citizen forum. Do we have anybody?
Signed up for Citizens Forum tonight.
Okay, then the next item is approval of minutes from,
Well, we
What?
do have somebody who wants to address it.
It was under item 7B. I'm sorry, I couldn't read the handwriting. I apologize. Come on down. This is Robin Hill.
Good evening. My name is Robin Hill. I live at 11504 Mountain View Road, United States of America. A comment, Ken Shipley, the senior board alderman here is Bob Markley. And if you got to have merit badges signed or discussion about what goes on here, he's qualified to do it for you all.
Thanks,
All right.
Bob.
Thank you. A compliment. I walk the walking trail from the library or from Schoolhouse Lane all the way to 75 every day and back again. And, sometimes 3 or 4 months ago, a big tree fell on the bridge down there and broke all the handrails off. So we've been walking around cones and broken handrails, and I want to compliment Bud and his master craftsman on putting that back together again. Looks good. I can't verify the anchorage of the handrail, but the handrail is an ADA compliant handrail. That applies to something else you're going to do later. Now, the second thing applies to that walk that I make, and I really would like for something to be done about this, and I haven't been able to figure out who's supposed to do it. But if I stand walking north at Grigsby Chapel pedestrian crossing, a whole stream of cars, and I do this about 7:30 in the morning, a whole stream of cars continues to come down the road. And in general, I'd have to say that because of the number of them, they're probably going pretty close to 35 miles an hour, which is not bad. They're close together, and in general, they don't pay any attention to me standing there. And there's a sign 50 feet from the crosswalk that says, if people want to walk, basically it says, if people want to walk, stop at the arrow that's behind the crosswalk 50 feet on either side of the eastbound and westbound crosswalk. Well, nobody can read a sign. Our remedial reading is deplorable. However, there will be finally a gap, and I'll walk across. This morning, or yesterday morning, I walked across, and I saw a car coming. It was halfway up the road beyond Wyndham Hall, but it was driven by a young lady who was buzzing down the road at 35 miles an hour, talking on the telephone, and she never saw me, ever. So I saw that I watched her, and I saw that she wasn't looking, so I held my ground on the sidewalk there. finally somebody stopped and I walked across. On the trip back, that was better. I walked across, coming from north to south, across the westbound Grigsby Chapel, fine, weren't any traffic there. I got to the eastbound Grigsby Chapel Road, and a gentleman had stopped his car right where he was supposed to, and I walked across. First time it's ever happened. Now, my point is that that's a state law to stop there. And in order to make that state law meaningful, somebody needs to be there to give out some tickets. We flagrantly violate traffic laws in Farragut. It's terrible. And I'd like for you to start right there, right there. So that's all, and thank you very much. Have a good meeting. I'll see you at item 7B.
Thank you, Bob. Bob, the gentleman that stopped for you is obviously a Farragut resident, knows darn Loudoun County, and somehow we've got to get them educated.
So that was the end of Citizens Forum. So this is now the approval of the minutes from September 14th.
Move to approve.
Second.
All in favor say aye. Aye. That passes. Go to ordinances, and the first one is hearing of second reading. Ordinance 17-13, an ordinance adopting and enacting a new code for the town of Farragut, Tennessee, providing for repeal of certain ordinances not included therein, providing for a penalty for the violation thereof when such code and this ordinance shall become effective.
Thank you, Mayor. The codification process this is second reading, is basically a process of consolidating our town ordinances. We look at the legislation that has been passed by the state and see if any of that legislation somehow differs with what our town code has. We hired the Muni Code, which actually has our current code of ordinances codified. They came in with their attorneys and looked at our entire code, as well as our town attorney, Tom Hale, to review all of our ordinances, looking for grammatical errors, making sure it was free of any conflicts, and the conformance to state law. They all recommend approval of Ordinance 17-13 on second reading.
I'm going to make a motion to approve Ordinance 17-13 on second and final reading.
I'll second that.
I have a question. Has this been published yet, or do we wait for the second reading? When will this be online?
We should have this online as soon as the board adopts it. We'll
Okay.
let Muni Code know, and then they will enact the new ordinance on our website, hopefully in the next week or so.
Okay.
All right, so all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That passes. Now for first reading, ordinance 17-16, ordinance amending the general fund budget of the fiscal year 2017-2018 budget, passed by ordinance 17-09, human resources, professional services.
Mayor, this item is a specific item that actually is going to be on your agenda here in just a few moments. We budgeted this year $60,000 to do a project that's called ADA Self-Assessment and Transition Plan. When we got the RFQs back from the prospective engineering firms, the bids or the proposals came back much higher than what we had budgeted. So this requested amount, an amended amount, is for an additional $90,000 to cover the total cost for the actual engineering study, for our total FY 2018 budget, general fund budget, to be amended to $7,204,579, and we would recommend approval on first reading.
I have a question.
Make a motion first.
Oh, we hadn't had a motion. Motion to approve Ordinance 17-16, first reading, to amend Ordinance 1709, fiscal year 2018 budget and general fund.
Second.
David, what does this entail exactly? What are we getting for $9,000?
Well, again, we're jumping ahead to the next agenda item here in just a second. But in general, we are under a mandate from obviously the federal government, but also TDOT to make sure that we do a self-assessment and a transition plan for all ADA items in the town of Farragut that are publicly, basically public owned, that you can enter into, and so this buildings, sidewalks, things like that. We need to make sure they're compliant, and so this engineering firm will come in, assess all of the infrastructure in the town that is a public area, and give us a recommendation on a transition plan going forward on how to fund fixing all those items down in the future. So that's what this is for. It's something that we have to do according to TDOT and the federal government, and we have a deadline, I think, of next year in December to get that done.
That's just the evaluation. This doesn't include any actual improvements or corrections.
That is correct.
That's correct.
We have in our budget right now, for CIP purposes, $50,000 a year in the next 4 or 5 years out, plus a restroom facility that we're going to be renovating. So we know of some items already that are out there in the future, but that $50,000 number may change based on this assessment and transition plan that we have to do.
So is and help me out here. So is the code, is the law, is the ADA Act so murky and cloudy and difficult to understand that it takes a $90,000 assessment to determine whether or not you're in compliance with it?
More than that.
It takes a very long time frame and a lot of effort in order to do that. Yes, there are some areas. I think Janet can probably answer this question a lot better. But the ADA code is a pretty thick code. You have to have a lot of expertise in that to know exactly what you need to include as part of item. I mean, there's a lot of items in there for various things that you need to make sure that you're building. For instance, this building was built before the ADA was actually enacted. So
right.
We know there are probably going to be items here, but we don't necessarily know all of them. So that's what this firm will do, is they are experts in this area. They can come in and assess the entire infrastructure that we need them to, and then they will come back and give us this transition plan. Then we can move forward and figure out how to fund future enhancements to make sure we're compliant with ADA.
Wow, sounds like some pretty good work if you can get it, huh? Okay.
Yes.
Any more discussion?
None.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
We're down to business items already. First one is approval of 23rd Farragut Fall 5K and Fun Walk, Farragut West, Knox Chamber Commerce applicant.
Mayor, this is the 23rd annual Farragut Fall 5K and Fun Walk, which will be held on our Mayor Bob Leonard Park, and it'll end in Mayor Bob Leonard Park. It'll go down Watt Road and utilize Sedgefield subdivision on Saturday, November the 11th, 2017. The events, again, will start in that general area, end up in Mayor Bob Leonard Park, and we'll need to close Watt Road from the intersection at Kingston Pike to just north of Sedgefield, and also some portions of Harrison Road. The race starts at 6 a.m., or the race starts at 8 a.m. Setup time starts at 6 a.m., and all cleanup will be completed by 10:30. Staff recommends approval provided that the representatives from Sedgefield subdivision are notified of the event prior to it occurring, and also recommend that the chamber ensure that upon the event's conclusion, the entire course is free of any litter.
I make a motion that we approve the 23rd running of the Farragut Fall 5K and Fun Walk.
Second.
I do. I want to correct your presentation, though. You said that it goes down Watt Road. I can assure you it does not go down Watt Road. It goes up Watt Road.
And Julia Blaylock and Tim Williams, both from the chamber, are here in case the board has any questions.
You have anything you want to say?
No, David covered it fine, but you're correct, Bob, it does definitely go up.
It definitely goes up. Anybody that has ever run that, I can tell you that for sure.
That's the hardest part of the race.
Heartbreak Ridge.
Mostly the same trail as last time.
Same course.
It is exactly
I do have a question for you. You may not know this because I know you're fairly new on this in this post, but it seemed like the Farragut Fall 5K was a bigger deal 20 years ago, 15 years ago. It seemed like it's kind of diminishing. Do you have any kind of a handle on the turnout for that?
Julie, do you mind coming to the podium and speak? I'm sorry. Thank you.
To answer your question, yeah, we have seen some differences in turnout. We still average approximately between 200 to 250 presents. I think that part of that is the fact that 5Ks have become more popular. There are quite a lot in the area.
Yeah.
And they're not terribly difficult to put on if you have a good race management team. So I think that that has been part of the attribution, but you're correct, I have noticed some of that.
Who's managing it? Is it Knoxville Track Club or who's?
We work with Knoxville Track Club to do some advertising via their website and web links. Total Race Solutions, which is Ron Fuller, is who manages the race, does the timing, provides the bibs, music, sound, and all of that necessary equipment.
I know the same people that do the Hot to Trot on
They
in
manage,
Turkey Creek, I think, aren't they?
yes, they manage quite a few different races.
And I think the turnout for that, it's well over 1,000, if I remember right.
But that's Thanksgiving morning. There's a big capture because of that, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I just wondering what we could do to promote that event. It's a great community event.
It
and,
is a great community
with a
event,
long
I agree with
tradition, and I'd love to see it grow and expand, and 'cause it really is a lovely venue. It's
It
a
is.
great course, and
Yeah.
One thing that we've kind of lucked into, thanks to the scheduling with the park construction, which was a happy accident, was Veterans Day was the only day available in terms of not being in competition with other major area races like Coleman and such. And our committee and the community seems to be responding really well to the vets and pets theme in terms of it being on Veterans Day. Plus, we do have the pet aspect. We now have for this race, not the race, I should say, the walk. We have a canine behaviorist and trainer who's a graduate of the Cesar Millan School, if any of you know the Dog Whisperer. And so he's going to be leading anyone on the walk that has a dog on a pack walk. And he'll have staff on hand that will be offering leash handling and training tips. So that'll be an added plus, and hopefully we'll see some additional response from that.
Can I bring my dog so you can train him?
You can bring your dog, but keep him on a leash.
He's
He's
not very
yours.
friendly.
I don't believe I have any more questions.
Okay, thank you.
Oh, I wanted to say one thing. They are looking for volunteers to help. So
Yes.
anyone who's interested, they need some help. So
Yes, we do.
I signed up.
Thank you.
You
Any
haven't
more
gotten back to
discussion?
me yet, but.
Say aye.
Aye.
Next one is approval of contract for ADA self-evaluation and transition plan.
It's
Yes.
all about.
Good evening. This is my, a follow-through to the money we just talked about. And as you know, Title II of the ADA requires state and local governments to make their programs, services, and activities accessible to persons with disabilities. And to comply with this, the town is required to complete a self-assessment and a transition plan. And a little bit of background, the ADA, these plans are talking not just about physical access requirements for public facilities, but it is also to eliminate all types of physical barriers, and it could be sight barriers, it could be hearing barriers, any type of disability. And the program, this self-assessment, will include looking at our programming, looking at our website, looking at our policies, in addition to the structural barriers that could be any place in sidewalks, in the parks, all of our gazebos, our walking trails, and of course our buildings, the, what do you call it, restroom facilities. What has spurred this is that TDOT and TDEC both their applications for grants now require ADA compliance documentation of a self-assessment or self-evaluation and the transition plan. Failure to comply with TDOT and TDEC may result in withholding of grant money. And they're quite serious about this. The good news is, if you look at the town, we're relatively new, and that historically we have adopted ordinances and codes that are in compliance with ADA legislation. We follow the TDOT requirements, which were ADA compliant with our road building. But with time, some of the parameters and requirements and little pieces here and there had changed. They've found that some things they thought would work for some to eliminate some barriers. Actually, there's something better now that they require. So it's kind of a moving, to address what you're talking about, Bob. There's a lot to it. The bottom line is, this is a lot of man hours, an awful lot. And between the man hours, and you all know we are a pretty lean organization, and we also do not have the detailed knowledge, the breadth of knowledge that's required to do I would say, a best effort at this. And if we're going to do it, we'd like to really do it right and get it right the first go around and not spend more money later to fix what we should have fixed now. And the transition, that's the assessment. The transition plan, this is something that can be done over time. There'll be money placed in the CIP year after year once we know what we're looking at that needs to be addressed, and we have a better idea of what the cost will be. The RFQ, the response is Kimley Horn is who was chosen by the evaluation committee to do this. Kimley Horn is very knowledgeable. They're a very large firm, but specifically they have the contract with the state of Tennessee. They have the contract with Knox County. They have been very, when I ask her questions about, are we talking about this, or they've seen it, they've done it. I think we will get a better, bang for our buck with this organization, and the evaluation committee did too, so we won't be running around chasing our tail, for lack of anything really professional language. But, so do you have questions?
I'm going to move for approval of the contract for Kimley Horn and Associates to complete and deliver an ADA self-evaluation and transition plan in the amount of $148,700.
I'll second.
Any more discussion?
Mayor, there are a couple comment cards too before y'all.
I have some questions. How detailed is this report going to be? I mean, is it going to tell us what we have going, what the current thing is, and what we need to do?
Yes.
Is it going to have drawings, and how detailed is this going to be?
That TBA, I don't know, but it will be, we will know, we will identify like the intersections. This intersection is not compliant because of this, this, and this, that has to be corrected. And the correction is this, and the estimated price would be this, and then we'll have that from them also.
Okay.
Alderman Pavlin, under the proposal that Kimley Horn gave us, they have a listing of the facilities on, I think
Yeah.
it's page 2. It's section 2.4.1. That really gives a good summary of all the buildings and facilities that they will be evaluating
Yeah.
for the town, which includes, as Janet already talked about, sidewalks, greenways, pedestrian bridges, signalized intersections, and unsignalized intersections, which we have around 800 of those unsignalized intersections. And then it also talks about what they will provide to us in the report. So they'll give us a cost outline, what they think the cost will be, a photo assessment of the areas that need to be improved, and also working with our GIS database to make sure they have everything mapped on where we need to have those things fixed.
So this is, we have on page 2, they list 4 facilities that they're going to analyze. So this is not talk about our sidewalks, our intersections, our,
It does. If you list down here, park sidewalk page.
okay, all right.
I had a question about, it requires that 2 public meetings. Are we going to have them separate? Are they going to be part of an MPC meeting? How?
Separate.
Separate, okay.
Public meetings will happen after we've done the assessment, so we know what needs, so that will help us prioritize the order we should do things in.
Okay.
So we can make decisions about how we move forward
Will this be online for the public to look at?
with the contract or the.
No, the evaluation.
When we get there.
Okay, thank you.
What's the timeline on that?
We hope the evaluation will be done late this fall or early winter, and then they'll
here
move
somewhere,
straight into the transition plan, which should be complete next fall,
Okay, thanks.
18.
By November 30th, 2000, what is it saying? I'm sorry. Set out request, okay, so that's when you, completion of ADA implementation transition plan by June 30th, 2018 is what it says in that contract.
We think it now may be a little later because we're late getting to you.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay. I have no more questions.
None?
All in favor, say aye.
Mayor, I'm sorry, we had did have 2 people that would like to speak on this
Oh, okay.
on this topic.
All right.
The first one is John Nels.
John Nels, 221 Smith Road. This is actually something I can speak with a little bit of authority and knowledge on. And what I would actually, I'm going to ask you or tell you what I'd like you to do is postpone this vote until the next meeting. I did not have a chance to get with Janet and David on this, but there is actually perhaps a much less expensive way to accomplish this self-evaluation. I'm familiar. Also, Kimley Horn's a great outfit. They do real good work. And I am really thrilled that the town is taking this effort. I mean, even if it is required, the town's always been very accommodating, very responsive, so I appreciate that. Basically, what I am proposing is that I do this on a volunteer basis at no charge to the town. There actually is something called the ADA National Network. It's there's 10 centers nationwide, and they exist for the purpose of helping organizations, governments, and so forth do their self-evaluation, get their transition plans, and implement ADA. Because so many cities are old, I mean, if you just look down the road at Lenore City, for example, or of course City of Knoxville, there's going to be a tremendous amount of survey work that has to go in and evaluations and all. Town of Farragut is much newer. Now, there's something I was just talking to Janet about, and there seems to be a little confusion on what she was hearing from TDOT at a specific question that was asked, and my understanding from the law itself, and that is there is an assumption in the regulation in Title II that construction after January 26, 1992 is compliant and doesn't have to be specifically measured. To go out with the inclinometer, the level, the tape measure, and all of that kind of thing. And that's where a lot of this, however many miles of things. I've done a quick, and like I said, I just didn't have a chance. I've been really busy the past 3 days and didn't get a chance. I actually wanted to pull this off the agenda until the next meeting, until I could talk with them. But there were some things, and she had talked about the moving target. One of the best examples are the dome pads. If you've ever seen in the crosswalk, the dome pads, what those are for visually impaired people. As they approach the intersection, either their cane can feel the domes or you feel it under your feet. And that's the intent of it. The law does not require that those be retrofitted into every intersection. It does require when you have new ones now going forward, you have to do it. But on the old ones, you don't. It'll operate on a request basis. So if somebody is vision impaired, has a particular path they're following, and would like to have that done, they come to the town, they make a request, and then you can act on that individually on those rather than trying to go back and retrofit 3,000 intersections, which may not be necessary. And then, of course, you would want to have a very good mechanism for them to do that. What I have here is something I printed off. It's from the ADA National Network, and it's kind of it's a 32-page kind of paint by numbers self-evaluation. And what I propose is, to get with Janet especially, to talk about this over the next couple of weeks, and we can come back around. This is something that needs to be done, but it's not 2-week urgent. That it has to be done tonight. And if we can find a better way to do this, especially on some of these recent constructions, Kinley Horn has to assume by the information they were given in the RFP when they're pricing this, they basically have to assume that everything needs to be evaluated and measured and have a transition plan and so forth, which is in the lack of any other information. That's what you have to do if you're going to make a bid. And I do think that may be a bit excessive. Now, there are some things like this building that you might want to have the experts come in specifically on some things like that. But like the sidewalks, I can do that. I've got an inclinometer, I've got a tape measure, I've got a level, and I'm happy to do it. I want Farragut to be the best that it can be. And of course, if this, what I was going to say earlier, is because of this self-evaluation, a cottage industry of consultants has evolved to go after government money. I mean, that's what they do, and it tends to be fairly high priced. What I'm just trying to do is say, hey, let me talk to them first and see if Janet and David say, nah, can't get there from here, then in 2 weeks from now or the next meeting, go ahead and pass it. But if we could significantly help this or reduce what we have to do based on some of my knowledge, I think it'd be helpful. And I'll answer any questions that you might have.
Mr. Nels, do you think you could meet the time frame that we have here to get this done on a volunteer basis?
And I've had some people volunteer to help me, and yes, I think so.
Okay. Janet, what do you? How do you feel about this?
I'd love to sit down and talk, and we'll just see.
Yeah, Alderman, I think it doesn't hurt to wait 2 weeks because we have second reading to actually go through and amend the budget anyway to make this happen. So we'd be glad to sit down with Mr. Nels and talk to him about, what certifications he has or what we need and all those different questions we may have around how we can get it done. And if there's things that we feel confident that, we don't necessarily need a professional engineering firm to go do for us, then we're certainly willing to sit down and see what we can divvy up if possible.
So your suggestion is to pass it on first reading and then?
Well, you've already passed the ordinance to put
true.
the money in the budget.
Yeah.
So you could postpone this for 2 weeks and
Okay.
it's not going to change anything because we can't actually do any work with Kinley Horn until second reading is approved and you actually have the money in the budget to allocate for it,
Makes sense.
if the board's willing to do that.
So we have a motion on the table that, what do we need to do, amend the motion?
Well, we still have one other speaker tonight,
Okay.
if you're okay with it.
Withdraw the motion, can't you?
You can. Yes, you can. Robin Hill also has signed up to speak.
I'm the same person that saw you a while ago. I'm going to put on my project manager hat, which I did for 30 years, and say that this, when I read the preliminary proposal, when I read the proposal from Kinley Horn, there were several things about it that worried me. The amount of work to be done is like up to a certain amount. They can do one thing and you've complied with that if they say nothing else needs to be done. So I don't really know what their proposal means in terms of the total work to do. I would say that you voted for $148,000 to Kinley Horn for this. Ordinarily in my other life, I did this in 2 steps. I did a feasibility study first, which basically was a listing of everything you wanted to do and an estimate that you got for the cost to do that, including the engineering, by looking up at the corner of the room and making a guess. Then, after that, and after the Congress had approved money, we went into the conceptual design phase, and we didn't say that, well, we need to do this particular thing. We looked at several methods of doing it, all the way from not doing anything to conceiving a way to engineer it and get a set of criteria that you could use to make construction drawings. Now, some of the work that you're going to find in here will require construction. Some of the work is going to require some topo and some design on some of the sidewalks. I would guess that the estimate that you have as a minimum probably represents over $1 million worth of work, maybe well over that. For instance, the garage, the service building, is not in here. Now, I don't know why that's not in here, but I didn't see it in there.
It's not public access.
You don't know that. It's accessed by your employees, and if you have a handicapped employee,
Well, that is true.
if
That
you
is
have, wait a minute, anybody who goes in that building that's the public has got to go in a building that's accessible. And if you want to prevent that, put a sign on it and say they can't go in. John Nails can't go in. Now, I think you're making a mistake. Of all the things that you have that are possibly problems, the service building may be one of the biggest. I would really like to extend John's guess of postponing it 2 weeks to 4 weeks. And I would like to sit down with John and the 5 of you, at least, around the conference table and not in a very formal area, and review this like you review a project ordinarily, piece by piece. See what it really means. I do not have a copy of your RFP, so I don't know what you asked them to do. I know what they bid on, because they delineated that. But this is a lot more complicated than you think, and it's probably a great deal more expensive than you think. And there'll be some things, like some of our walking trails could never be ADA compliant.
That's true.
Not possible unless you want to do an extensive amount of grading to meet the slope requirements and the handicap requirements for getting on and off of it, getting in and out of a car, turning around, having first responders being able to approach you on a gurney or whatever at any point on the trail. That's complicated, folks. You're talking about human lives. And you ought to take the time to figure out what it is you're buying before you buy it. Because I don't think that you know that answer right now. And I would guess that as a minimum, you ought to ask whoever gets the job, if you still want Kimberly Horn. They've signed it, you haven't, so right now it's a proposal to you. But I would guess that you would want to look at what their proposal covers very carefully and then make a realistic approach to how much you're really asking them to do and have them give you the estimate for doing that work with at least one engineering solution to every job that requires engineering. And that's the way you do that kind of business, and it can't be done in this kind of a room. It's got to be done around a conference table. So my recommendation is that let John do his work for 2 weeks. Sometime after that, we ought to sit down around the conference table and review what he's done, review what Kimberly Horn has proposed, review what we want, and see if you can get closure and see if there needs to be any changes made in what's been proposed or what's been asked. And I don't really know what your state deadline is on this, but some of these things were built 25 years ago. And I picked that number because that's how long one of the sections, how long ago one of the sections was passed. And I can guarantee you a lot of things have changed in the code in 25 years. So that's my message to you. Go slow, understand what you've got, and then go ahead and do what you have to do. But do it with some knowledge beyond what you've got now. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, I agree with Mr. Hill's assessment of the situation. I don't feel that I have enough information to award this contract, and I'd certainly like to have time to workshop it, and I'd like to put forward an alternate motion to table this for 4 weeks until we can have some discussion on it and have a workshop on it.
Well, I have a question.
Yeah, let's look at the,
Yeah,
I need to look at the calendar.
not really, but
It's going into January.
When does the Fed say this has to be done?
TDOT.
Motion to table is not debatable.
What's that?
The motion to table is not debatable. You got to vote on it.
Okay. We're going to ask a question. When does this have to be done?
We are required,
I think we're still in discussion right now.
All right, I second.
we are required to report to TDOT in December. The mayor writes a letter and it explains the progress we have made on our self-assessment.
Is that December 17th?
This is December of 17, yes.
And that goes to Washington then?
No,
TDOT.
it goes to TDOT.
We have to give a progress report, Mayor, basically to say, what have you been up to? What have you accomplished so far in your assessment process? So the true assessment and transition plan are not due, I believe, until a year from that point. So December of 18, right around that time frame,
That
correct?
is the deadline.
To have everything done. So we have about a year. We'd like to get it done before that, so we have plenty of time to review it and workshop it and everything else we need to do.
Prioritize it and-
Right, but so that's the biggest concern, is just to make sure there is a lot of work in the RFQ that we did and in the proposal that Kimley Horn has. So we just want to make sure that we can get all of that done by the deadlines that we have are mandated to make.
And that mandate is to have a plan in place. It's not to have all the work done.
Correct. You do not have to have the construction done. We just have to have a plan on how we're going to fund it going forward, and that can be several years to get those things done, and that's what we obviously would plan on doing. But part of that process is to evaluate how much each of these items are going to cost us as well. So if we have an intersection, if we have a signal that we need to go fix, whatever it may be, though, Kimley Horn's job is to give us a cost estimate of what that would be so we can budget for it in future years.
So I think a lot of the evaluation we could do in-house and then
Correct.
boil it down to what we want Kimley Horn to do, what's beyond the scope of our.
Exactly, that's what I'm saying. And what Janet was saying is correct, it's a state deadline. In fact, the ADA, the federal, has no deadline at all. They just suggest that you do it, but it actually is not federally mandated. And they were also very specific in there, and for a reason, that it is a self-evaluation and not an audit that would require an independent organization. So it can be done in-house with volunteers, with just regular people.
I'll just make two comments. This was a very hot topic at last week's city manager conference that I went to in Gatlinburg. Many of the cities that are undergoing this process right now have numbers that are way higher than ours when it comes to having to pay to assess their cities. And it mostly has to do with infrastructure, how much you have. Bigger cities are going to pay more, certainly. But the second part of it is that makes me nervous is that a couple of cities have turned in, TDOT's not given a lot of direction on what you have to turn into them. So a couple cities have done a self-assessment themselves, turned it in and been denied and said, you have to go redo this. So that is certainly my concern, is that we make sure we get it right. One of the reasons why I know the evaluation team picked Kimley Horn is because they already have the state contract. They know what they know what will get passed by the state. And so that's one of the, I guess, comfort factors in knowing that you've got a pretty good firm that you're working with to get it done. So we can evaluate what we can do ourselves with help, because I think our staff certainly is not able to get to all these areas, certainly in a time frame that we need to do it by, nor has the expertise to know each of these areas that needs to be done. We know some areas, but not all. So I think if we want to take some time and look at that, that's fine. I'm just, again, concerned that we go ahead in the next 2 to 4 weeks, if that's what the board wants to do, and make sure we have a plan to go forward at that point.
Right, and I'm not asking we just sweep this thing under the rug, but that we take some time to sit down, look it over, and see what we're actually getting into. So we have a motion and a second to table it for 4 weeks, and in the intervening time to set up a workshop and discuss this. Okay. I have no further discussion.
Any more discussion? All in favor, say aye. Aye.
Let me make a request on your workshop. Your notes, Mr. Smoke's notes, I believe, indicated that a number of things have been done that already have these assessments in them when they were designed. And the staff ought to pile all of those assessments on the table so that we can look at them and see what's already been done.
That would be good.
And then go from there. Now, I don't advocate doing more than the law requires, but I'll absolutely stand behind forever doing what the intent of the law is. And the intent of the law is to make things safe for handicapped people. And not only safe, but accessible.
Thank you.
So we're down to town administrator's report.
I have nothing to report, Mayor.
Town attorney's not here, so we are now adjourned. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
7:40.